I had a passion for investing in young people. And what one woman said to me completely changed how I ran my business. No successful person ever came back to my high school and gave us a sense of what a successful business future could look like. People with money like to work with people who are givers in the community. So many people spend money they don't have to impress people they don't even care about with money that's going to put them in debt. If you want to make it rain, connect with pain. We tend to overcomplicate what we're talking about. You'll actually sound smarter the simpler you present the solutions to the problems. I was the top fee-based advisor out of 10,000 advisors across the country. And people would ask, Derrick, how do you charge so much in fees? Now, some people may not like this, but it's the best way to keep control is by giving up control. I know it's crazy, but I picked up my first $1 million client on $75 of gift cards.
Derrick, good to see you again. I don't know if you remember, but I had you do a 1-minute interview one time.
How long ago was that?
Probably like 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Really?
I was like testing out. I was like, I didn't have a podcast at the time. I was like, if I asked people to come on and do a 1-minute, answer one question, like would people respond to it?
Okay, this rings a bell. Okay, yes, I remember this now. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm happy to have a longer discussion with you because what you do is there's a lot of folks out there, they have a message, they have a skill set, yet they don't believe or they don't feel like they're able to share that skill set, or they're not, a lot of people feel this way is like, man, like how's that person doing it better than me? And they suck. And like, why can't I do better than them sort of deal? So, I mean, that's essentially what you're doing now because you had a successful advisory business, you sold it. Now you just wear beautiful shirts and help people craft their message.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, at least the beautiful shirt part is correct. It's funny. We were talking offline a bit, and I built a financial planning firm over 25 years. And I was, this guy that didn't have any natural market. I didn't know all the people in town. I was 26. I looked like I was 13. Had everything going against me. But I began to realize that I had a passion for investing in young people. And so I had this crazy idea, Josh, is I took a $50 Amazon gift card for the teacher and a $25 Amazon gift card for the student, and I created a Teacher and Student of the Month award at my alma mater high school. And I began to do this because I just loved giving back, because no successful person ever came back to my high school and gave us a sense of what a successful business future could look like. People just said, take your math and your science, everything's going to work out. But we kind of thought there was more to the story, right? And so I began to do this, and I got to breathe life into these teachers and the students. And we put a picture of myself and the principal and the student and the teacher in the newspaper back in the day. And I began to get some phone calls. And what one woman said to me completely changed how I ran my business, Josh. She said, Derrick, we know you're young, we know you're new, but we want you to be our financial advisor. And she said, it's because you care about what we care about. She said, you care about what we care about. And the moment she said that, it was like this weight was lifted off my shoulders, because what it meant was I didn't have to be the most well-connected or the best looking or have all the contacts in the world or know everything about being a financial advisor. I just needed to care about what the people I wanted to work with cared about. It was like this big epiphany. And what I began to do then is I began to sponsor all the local high schools. And what I realized was people with money like to work with people who are givers in the community. It gives them status to work with advisors and business owners who they see as giving back. And so I know it's crazy, but I picked up my first $1 million client on $75 of gift cards.
Nice. Yeah, it's crazy how once you find like the right path to go down, how much easier it becomes versus a lot of people go down the path, especially, a lot of professions. Everyone's like, oh, I want to do this because that guy makes a lot of money. I want to make a lot of money. And then you end up going down the wrong path, attracting the wrong people. And then you end up in a form of hell almost because you're working with people you don't really like, but you're making money. So now you're like, what do I do? I'm stuck here. And it seems like you actually just flipped the script on its head and just ran with it.
Well, I did. And it's funny because, this is kind of a money example, but so many people spend money they don't have to impress people they don't even even care about with money that's going to put them in debt. And so the point is, don't do things, A, to please other people, but B, to your point, so many people think based on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram that if you make a lot of money, it's probably pretty easy to do it, because the people who make a lot of money make it seem like it's easy to do it. Here's the general rule. If a person can make a lot of money, it's going to be a lot of hard work to make a lot of money. But the key is, once you find what works, then you want to just repeat it over and over again. So part of the work is doing the work, but part of the work is repeating the work over and over again. So let me ask you this, Josh. Let's say that your favorite band was coming to town. Like who's like your favorite band you would love to go see in concert?
A band.
A group of any sort.
Man, we have small children, so we haven't been able to go out to any concerts in a long time. All right, if someone was like coming to town and I was like, all right, whatever, we're hiring a babysitter, we're going. But could it be any band? Like anytime? I would say I would love to see Elton John again. Okay,
so let's use Elton John as an example. When Elton John and any musicians that accompany him arrive in your hometown, do you think they go to a coffee shop a couple hours before the show and they say, okay, guys, we got to come up with all new music for tonight's show? And then they do that at every city they go to. They've got to come up with new music everywhere they go. Or do they say, let's just make tonight sound like the first time we've ever sung these songs for the past 20 or 30 years, right?
Right. You want a repeatable process. Like, McDonald's doesn't make the best burger, but they make the same burger across the world.
So you think about athletics, you think about sports teams, actors, actresses, successful business owners. They found a formula that works for them really, really well, and they simply follow the formula day in and day out. It almost gets boring, but sometimes people think that making a lot of money is a glamorous thing. It's simply doing the same deliberate tasks over and over again, but you want to make sure you're doing the right tasks and the most productive tasks over and over again. I made this mistake a long time ago because I kept beating my head against the wall thinking if I just kept doing it, then the results would change. But now I've learned that's how they define insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, and it doesn't lead to different results.
So you gave the gift cards. Did you already have your messaging figured out at that point? Were you attempting to figure it out? How did you develop this framework? And it sounds like you just kind of stumbled across it on accident.
Well, one of the things that I dreaded most is when I was in a social setting. Let's say I was at church, at Rotary Club, at an event, and inevitably somebody would ask me the question, hey, so what do you do for a living? The moment they asked that, I would just cringe oh, this is not going to go well. And here's why I say that. I would always say I'm a financial advisor. Proud of the work I did. I studied a long time to get the licenses. The value I provided was off the charts. But people's response, I would say financial advisor, their eyes would start to roll back. They would glaze over. They would step back a little bit. They'd utter something like, I have enough insurance already. It just got ugly really, really fast. And I began to hope in social settings, people would not ask me, what do you do for a living? I would try to turn the conversation on them to avoid that. Then I had this realization. If you want to make it rain, connect with pain. If you want to make it rain, connect with pain. You see, when I say the words financial advisor or wealth advisor or entrepreneur business owner, what I'm actually doing, Josh, is I'm forcing the person I'm talking to burn their brain cells to figure out what I do. And it's based on this internal checklist of what they think a financial advisor or an entrepreneur does. They might be thinking, well, my mom got ripped off by a financial advisor. Business owners like that, I've heard, don't do a good job. They are always in it for themselves, or whatever they believe. All you said was your job title. And so what I learned was, if you want to make it rain, connect with pain. And the goal is, how quickly can you connect with an instantly relatable pain point that the person instantly understands? So Josh, let me give you two examples of this. I'm going to say two things. I want to see how you respond to it. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Josh, you know how when you take your car to the mechanic, it often feels like you're getting taken advantage of or overcharged?
Oh, yeah. I went to Jiffy Lube one time because it was convenient. And then they're like, oh, you need to spend $1,200. You need to replace this whole part. And then I was like, $1,200, I could spend $1,200, but let me just get a second opinion. I actually went to a mechanic. He's like, I can look at it, but I got to charge you $135 for the diagnostics. So I was like, you know what, I'll spend $135, see if I could close the gap a little bit. And I found out by spending a little money, I was able to save a lot of money. money.
What a great example there. So now for those of you watching this or listening, when I said that phrase, Josh instantly said, yeah. I mean, you got that analogy immediately, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a full story for it.
Full story. I mean, it was like a hidden nerve right there. So here is example 2. So let's say that 2 moms are talking to each other and each one is the mom of a teenage daughter. And one mom says to the other mom, hey, you know how it feels like when you talk to your daughter? What you say goes in one ear and right out the other, and she gives you the eye roll? How does mom typically respond?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. So those are 2 examples of if you want to make it rain, connect with pain. You see, in both of those examples, those are instantly relatable pain points that people instantly say, yes, I completely understand that. And it requires no brain cells to be burned. So what I would tell advisors, for example, when I was a financial advisor, I did a little survey and kind of an analysis of my clients. I call this my recent clients I most recently brought on, and then my favorite clients. And the thread that wove through all of them was they were concerned about running out of money in retirement. Okay. And so I began to specialize in what I called retirement income planning, helping people recreate their paycheck in retirement. So what I developed was I call this my you-know-how framework. And now it's used by advisors and entrepreneurs all over the country with great success. But for me, what it sounded like was, Josh, if you said, Derrick, hey, what do you do for a living? I would say, well, Josh, you know how so many people, they worry about running out of money in retirement? We help fix that. Through our 5-step custom-tailored planning process, we create a strategy so they no longer have to worry about running out of money and they can feel confident. We specialize in retirement income planning. Did I say the words financial advisor at all during that?
I didn't hear it.
And so the point is, when you say your job title, it's like a door automatically slams in your face. But when you say, you know how, and you connect to an instantly relatable problem, you're opening the door for them to say, oh, tell me more. You see, that's the door that you want. And so I call that the you-know-how framework. And the point is, when you say, you know how, it automatically tells the person they're probably going to know what you're talking about. And then you want to say it with concern and care in your voice. If I simply say, you know how people worry about running out of money? Well, it sounds so fast and so flippant, there's no meaning. But you want to sound like, I've got the secret to help you ease your financial pain or help you solve your business problem. So the tonation is very important. So it might sound like, you know how so many people, they worry about running out of money in retirement? We help fix that. You see, you sound so sincere and caring, people can't help but say, dude, this guy must really know what he's talking about. Tell me more about that. So that framework literally changed my entire business model. We grew and grew because now we attracted people to us. We started attracting and stopped chasing, which was the key.
How did you come up with that? Did you just one day you're thought of it, you're like, this is it. And then it just all started you have lots of ideas. You're trying to run a business. You're like, this is it. This isn't it. This is it. This isn't it. So eventually you just got there and then just went, boom, this is it.
What happens is I'm a big believer in what I call the focus group principle. Okay, so let me tell you a story. So we have 4 kids. When my youngest son he was about, I think he was junior high age. He would come in our bathroom in the morning as we were all getting ready. He was getting ready for school. And he'd ask, hey, do I look good in this color? And sincerely, if I thought he did, I would say, yes, son, I think you do look good. And my wife would echo the same thing. And he would say, you're just saying that because you're my parents. I said, well, here's what I would do. Why don't you go ask your sisters? If your sisters tell you look good in that, even if you don't like the color, then you like that color. He said, what do you mean? I said, listen, if the girls tell you they like what you're wearing, then wear more of that. I said, that's your focus group. And the lesson was sometimes we look in the mirror or we hear something and we judge ourselves as though we know ourselves best, and we don't let other people tell us the truth they see about us. For example, when someone says, Derrick, you really look good in blue, well, by golly, I'm going to start wearing blue and pink, another color people say I look good in all the time, even if I don't even like it, because people like those colors. So what I learned was when I would talk to people and they would say, what do you do for a living? I began to test phrasing on people. And what often happens is is advisors and business owners are the worst at this. Okay. We tend to overcomplicate what we're talking about. And so, if you confuse people, that is not the pathway to bring them in as a client. Again, you want to make it instantly relatable. I joke, you want to make the language so clear that a third grader could understand it. And so what I like to do is test it with third graders. And I begin to figure out, like in my own phrasing, how so many people worry about running out of money in retirement? As I slightly nod my head, we help fix that. So the point is, you want to say, how, and then you insert who is the target market of who you're serving. So here's an example. One of the coaching clients I've begun working with, we did this kind of a survey on his clients. And what he realized, Josh, was that so many people he works with, the characteristics were they're high earners, they're professionals, but they're stressed out and they don't feel connected to their families when they're home. Okay. That was like the common thread across all different industries. So we began to craft his how statement to say something like, how so many professionals, they make good money, but they feel stressed and absent at home. We help them fix that. You see, it became instantly relatable. People are like, yes, I do make good money. I do feel stressed and I feel absent at home. Like three main things that anybody can understand. They're like, wow, how do you do that? So it opens up a conversation. It opens the door. It doesn't close the door. And so the goal is, as you test the phrasing, I like to say words equal wealth. And then people tell you based on their instant reaction, they say, oh yeah, boy, I get that. That's me. Or they may say, that's so-and-so that I know, boy, he could really use your help. So based on their feedback, now you're dialing it in to be very, very clear and very, very simple. But keep in mind, typically the how framework is so simple, you're not going to believe it's going to work. But it works because it's so simple.
Yeah, the problems are complex and the answers are simple.
Well said.
Or we learn in school, keep it simple, stupid. I think that was one.
Well, and it's funny because so many people, they go to college or they're taught, I need to impress. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes what we find is, and it took me a long time to realize this, and working with high net worth clients all over the country, I used to think I needed to oversell myself and overimpress based on describing complicated solutions to their problems. And finally, it was a very successful vice president making a lot of money, pulled me aside very politely and said, Derrick, you're a great advisor, but there's one thing, if you're open to it, that could really help you. And I said, please give me your feedback. Somebody I highly respected. He said, first of all, you're overcomplicating the simple. He said, I was overcomplicating the simple. He said, Derrick, in my job is complicated, he told me. He makes decisions every day. He makes decisions that affect the company, that affect people's lives, thousands of employees. And so when he works with professionals, he doesn't want more complexity. He pays for simplicity. He said, remember, your job is not to sound complicated and smart. You'll actually sound smarter the simpler you present the solutions to the problems. And when he said that, again, it was like a box checked of like, oh my gosh, that will revolutionize how I communicate. So many people think the smartest person can rattle off the jargon and the funky language and all the complicated acronyms, that's going to buy them respect and credibility. And what it buys is people leaving wondering, what the heck is that person talking about? I just want a simple answer to my problem, and I will pay the person well for it.
Totally. So like you found this framework and it's obviously repeatable, and it's like Elton John having to sing Rocket Man for the millionth time with the same passion and like giving that performance, but it's beautiful every time he does it. How do you, during that process, make sure you didn't lose like your inner voice of who Derrick is? Because once you get good at something, it almost becomes like, you're there, but you're not really there sort of deal. And that's something a lot of people struggle with.
Well, as I coach advisors and professionals around the country, one of the things I walk them through is this exercise. I call it the 5 and 5. So we'll look at people's 5 most recent clients and then their 5 favorite clients. And we want to look at 3 things. And for those people listening, this is a great exercise to do. You want to ask, what was the problem they came to you to help them solve? And typically it's a bit deeper than, I just want to do better with investing. I want to save for retirement. Typically there is a fear. There's a negative consequence they recognize is there and they want to avoid it. For example, what I landed on, running out of money in retirement, not saving enough money in retirement, having to go back to work in retirement, not getting to spend time with my family when I give all I have at the office. You see, See, all of those things are worries that people have that are legitimate. Okay. So once you learn what that is, now you know some of the language to use. The next step, Josh, is to say, what was the emotion that they felt when they came to work with you? Were they nervous, anxious, worried? Were they unsure about the future? And then what was the emotion they began to feel once you helped them solve that problem? I feel relieved. I feel optimistic. I feel confident. I feel empowered. You see, those are the words that we then weave in to your you-know-how framework. Okay. So that way it's based on what your current clients are telling you. Here's the pain I'm bringing to you for you to help me solve. And here's the emotion I felt pre-you. And here's the emotion I now feel post-you, if that makes sense.
It does. So essentially you figured out, well, if you ask some people, you're like, who's your favorite clients? They just pick like the top 5 biggest ones. But what you're striving for, it sounds like, don't just pick the top 5 like largest clients in terms of revenue. Choose the 5 that you believe you enjoy the most working with, and then crafting, making sure you use the right language to build the, not just the thread, but allow you to make a whole shirt.
Yeah, good analogy right there. Yeah, so one of the things that we find is, once you can connect with people, and by the way, this is sort of like the modern day elevator pitch, okay? So many people want to go into this long paragraph. Here's our features and benefits of our products and services. Here's what I do. And the bottom line is everyone is listening to one radio station every minute of every day. And it's WII-FM. And it stands for What's in It for Me. Mm-hmm. It's their favorite. I listen to the station all the time myself. And so ultimately people are filtering to say, do you have a solution that can ease my pain and my problem? When I go on stage, part of my intro that I talk about is I'll bring my roller bag of luggage on stage. And I'll say to people, when we're young, this roller bag feels light and it's filled with our hopes and our goals and our dreams. But as we get older, this roller bag gets heavy and it's weighted down by our problems and our pain and our worries and our fears. And deep inside all of us is a longing for someone to lighten our luggage. And what I tell the audience is turn to the person to your right and say, you are a luggage lightener. If you take nothing else from Josh and I's conversation today, remember that as the advisor, business owner, entrepreneur, everyone is carrying behind them a roller bag of luggage, and they desperately need you. If you can explain it well, you can help lighten their luggage by helping them ease some of their problems and their pain. But the reason why so many people's luggage is so heavy is because people add on complicated words. They don't add simple to understand solutions to their problems, which make their luggage lighter.
Yeah, it's like traveling with your family. There's a lot of luggage to carry.
in many, many ways in that example, yes.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I are, we're going to go to Florida, and she's going to drive down. I'm going to fly down. So she's going to take the car with our youngest, and then I'm going to take she's only like 2.5, and we're going to fly down. So we're dividing and conquering there. So yeah, I mean, just making things as simple as possible. And that could be difficult, especially if I feel like it's easier when people get into an industry and they don't know anything about it. And then versus the person that actually takes the time to study it, they get too far into the weeds. So it's kind of like, how do you dial it back when you want to work at a high level? At the same time, though, if you talk and people are looking at you like, what the heck is this guy talking about? It's going to just leave people feeling confused and saying, nice to meet you, Derrick. Have a good day.
Right. Well, it's interesting because once you can dial in the you-know-how framework for you, there's a couple things that happen. First of all, just like learning anything new, it's going to sound awkward at first. You're going to feel like this sounds so scripted. It doesn't sound like me talking. But keep in mind, you are your harshest critic. So just like an actor or an actress memorizes their lines and they want to have it take on their own voice, this is the same thing. The key is what you're doing is if you want a different result than what you're getting right now, if you're feeling frustrated that when you say, I'm a business owner, I'm a financial advisor, whatever your title is, and people's eyes start to glaze over faster than a Krispy Kreme donut, then if you keep doing that, you're going to get the same boring, frustrating result. And so to do something different, it means you've got to do something different. And when you begin to think of yourself like the specialist, okay, let me tell you a quick story, Josh. So one of the things I like to talk about is contrasting a Hershey bar and Godiva chocolate. Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's say, and this is for all of our listeners, if you were going to buy the chocolate lover in your family, a gift of chocolate, which one would say to them, I love you more, the Hershey bar or the Godiva chocolate?
If it's for the children, Hershey. If it's for your wife or someone special to you, Godiva chocolate.
Yeah. So let's go. This analogy is really more for the adults in the room. So the Godiva. So when I talk about this, Hershey, they're both about 7.5 ounces, a box of Godiva and then the large Hershey bar. Hershey typically costs about $7 to $8. And then the Godiva is often about $20. Okay. So typically it's about 2 to 3 times more than Hershey. And I will often ask, what causes Godiva to be more expensive than the Hershey bar? And people say things like, packaging, perception, the taste, the quality. Most people blindfolded say both chocolates taste about the same. And so what I ask all of you listening right now is this: in your local buying community, where your prospects and clients are, do they view you as the Hershey bar advisor or business owner? You're like everybody else. You're like a commodity who's based on the lowest price. Or do they view you as the specialist? You're the Godiva chocolate who people wait and they pay more because you have specialized knowledge that other people don't have. Which one are you? Now that question might hit you right between the eyes. And that was my point. And here's a question for you. If you needed to have a delicate medical procedure done, let's say you were having a problem with your heart, okay? Would you want to go to the general practitioner who knows a little bit about hearts, or would you want to go to the specialist who all they did was work on hearts 24/7?
You want to go to the specialist.
The specialist. And so what would we know about going to see the specialist? Number one, let's say if this was Friday at 4 p.m., would you get in first thing Monday morning? Or would you have to wait a little bit to get in?
You'd be lucky to get in within a month.
Exactly. Lucky to get in within a month. You'd be on a waiting list. Now, based on the insurance, this can vary, but would you expect to pay more or less for the specialist?
Definitely more. Hopefully you
Hopefully
you signed up for the right plan.
That's right. That's how you test it. And then third, by going to the specialist, would you be thinking to yourself, well, he's not going to know much. I'm just going to probably do this procedure myself anyway. I'm not going to really take many notes. Or would you go in thinking, whatever this person says, I'm going to probably follow their exact advice?
Yeah, you're gonna listen to them because that's what they do all day.
That's what they do. And so the point is, when you begin to label yourself as the specialist, whether you're the advisor, the business owner, the founder, the entrepreneur, all of you have a problem that you're solving in your you-know-how framework. And then the third line of that is, we specialize in. And by saying yourself and defining yourself as the specialist, you're automatically viewed higher. You're more respected. People want to work with you. And even if they don't have the same specialty or the same need, they're more attracted to you because you specialize. Just like somebody told me once that even in the NFL, there's people that specialize only in just, catching punts or kicking off or just doing certain plays. That's all they do. And so I think oftentimes we think the illusion is, well, I need to be all things to all people. That's how I'm going to really grow my business. What happens is when you try to be all things to all people, you're everything to no one. When you say, we specialize in this, that there's a lot of general practitioners out there, we specialize in this narrow slice of the pie, you become instantly more respected, higher paid, and you begin to deal with issues over and over again that accelerate your expertise even faster.
It's kind of like the first thing I thought about was golf.
Golf, yep.
You have to hit a lot of different shots in golf. You got to be a specialist at a lot of different clubs. But if you take a step back and you only think about one shot and just taking that one shot, you're not going to use your driver when you're on the putting green and vice versa. And then just reverse engineering that into your business, it could definitely make things easier. So yeah, it's super simple. I read your emails. And one thing that you say is no fee, no me.
Yes.
So is that kind of sort of what you're talking about as well in, helping elevate your status? Because I have a feed just to chat, and a lot of people are like, well, every other person is free. I was like, well, I'm not every other person.
Well, and that's a good example. So as a financial advisor, I was the top fee-based advisor out of 10,000 advisors across the country. And people would ask, Derrick, how do you charge so much in fees? Well, first of all, I believed in the fee-based process. when people pay you a fee, it's like they're voting for you with their dollar, saying, you have the solution to my pain, and I'm willing to pay you well for it because I trust you to help that pain stay away from me. Okay, so I had a high value of my own personal value that I would add to people. So I would jokingly say, when it comes to charging people appropriately, no fee, no me. And people laugh because it rhymes, but that was my mantra. No fee, no me. And what this leads to, Josh, is that there's a point that often is a fatal mistake that most consultative salespeople and business owners make. And here's what it sounds like. The prospect comes into the office or they're on Zoom, however you're doing it, and they begin to say to you, here's the problem I've got. And the professional, wanting to be helpful, wanting to demonstrate their competency, begins to solve their problems. Mm-hmm. And so the visit, by the way, I call them visits and not meetings. A meeting you have with your proctologist. It can feel cold and isolating, but a visit is warm and inviting. And with people, you want to create a verbal experience. Hey, let's visit together. It sounds non-threatening and sounds inviting. So in the visit, what often these professionals will do is they solve the problems so people leave thinking, boy, you just helped me out a lot. Thank you so much. The advisor or the business owner feels great. The person left happy, and then they ghost them, because there was no urgency created. You see, the prospect thinks in their mind, this is the one problem I had. They helped solve it. Thank you so much. There's no need to work with you. And so I would then jokingly say, and I meant it, no fee, no me. So what I tell people now in my training is, you want to stir the problem and not solve the problem. Stir the problem, not solve the problem. What does that mean? When someone says, well, Derrick, here's the question I've got. Should I open up this type of a retirement account or open up this type of business? What should I do? And I simply say, and when you have that feeling that the answer or the solution is about to jump out of your mouth, instead you want to say, Josh, is that something you'd like my help with? Yes, Derrick, I would. And then you want them to hear you, either see you typing or writing notes. They need to see you doing the listening hustle, I call it, and then say out loud, okay, Josh, you'd like my help knowing which retirement plan is best for you. Now, Josh, let me ask you this. What would happen if you don't solve that problem? Then let the prospect tell you, well, I don't know what to do. I may not be able to retire. Okay. So it sounds like that is something you want my help with. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So the point there is, and this is very fundamental, the only problem that you're solving in the prospect visit is in the prospect's mind. Do you have the ability to solve their problem? You see, that's the key. You want there to be so much urgency and so much concern built up in that visit. They're like, please tell me how I can work with you. Because no fee, no me. You see, once people paid me a fee to help them solve their problems, I became brilliant, Josh. It was amazing how smart I became once they signed the paperwork and became a client and paid me for my advice. Once they did that, suddenly the solutions just came out of my mouth like this beautiful melody. And the key there is, I realized if I solve the problems of the prospect in that first initial visit before they sign on with me, I could be costing their entire family the ability to have a better financial future. Does that make sense? So it's a very serious moment in the sense that if I let them walk out of here thinking they've got it all solved, there's no urgency, I might be the one person that changes their entire family's financial or business trajectory for generations to come. That's why no fee, no me.
Yeah. And it's going back to the Jiffy Lube versus the auto mechanic. I called him. I was like, hey, can you look at the car? He goes, yeah, it's I need to do a diagnostic. So he's like, well, I don't know what the problem is. Jiffy Lube said this, but I'm not sure if that's the correct issue or not. I have to do X, Y, Z in order to come up with a solution. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it ended up saving me a lot of money just because I invested in a specialist, and that specialist took the time to diagnose the issue and then relayed what the issue was and then came back with a solution only after I paid the diagnostic fee.
Great example right there. And so, what I would say is kudos to that person for charging you the diagnostic fee. Many people might have said, well, I'm going to reduce this fee. I'm not going to charge you anything at all, hoping you'll let us do the work for you. I give you free and then hopefully you'll come to me. And often that's a broken strategy. One of the things that I like to share with people is that there's a moment, I call these high stakes conversation moments, Josh. Okay, here's an example. Picture if you've had this happen to you, or you probably have seen this. Someone gets called on by surprise. This happens in church a lot. There's the guy with the deepest voice. The pastor shocks him and says, "Hey, Joe, can you pray?" And suddenly, "Dear God," and his voice crackles and goes 9 octaves higher, and he sounds nervous as all get out. Okay, we've seen this happen. So let's say you're in a board meeting, or you get called on in a group and you're caught by surprise. Typically what happens is your voice goes higher and you talk faster. And it's because you're nervous and you've been caught by surprise. So I like to tell people you want to communicate like you cook a brisket, low and slow. So I live here in Texas, and in Texas, we love our barbecue. And my favorite is brisket. And how do they cook brisket? Low and slow. And so I tell people when they face these high stakes conversation moments, when their heart starts to accelerate, they feel nervous, you just want to go brisket. Talk a little bit lower and a little bit slower, and you automatically sound more empathetic and caring and knowledgeable. So here's what this might sound like. There's always a moment with that prospect, either in person or on Zoom, where it's time to talk about here's how we work with our clients and here's how we get paid. And in this moment, so many professionals tell me, Derrick, my heart rate accelerates, I lean in, my voice goes higher, I talk faster. It might as well have a neon sign behind me that says, I'm trying to sell you something, beware, beware. And so instead what I coach people on is this should be the most relaxed part of the entire visit. And so watch my body language. You want to lean back a little bit, open gestures, let people see your entire torso. And you want to say, now let me share with you how we work with our clients and how we get paid. Now, it's very, very important to specifically say the words, how we get paid. You see, there's a psychological phenomenon that basically people are thinking to themselves, how do they get paid? And so when you verbalize what you know they're thinking, you look brilliant, but it neutralizes that concern. So many people think, well, pricing is an issue, but when you call out what you believe they're thinking, that neutralizes that and becomes a non-issue. So when you say, we're going to talk about how we get paid, then what I would often do is say, there's no shortage of financial advisors, business owners, whatever business you're in. What makes us special and why people choose to work with us is because we specialize in insert your specialty. You see, my tone changes. I talk a little bit lower and just a little bit slower to slow down the pace because I want this to be the most important part of the visit. Now, for example, if I'm charging a yearly fee, which I did as a financial advisor, or this might be for a realtor, a roofer, whenever you're quoting a price, I like to give up control. Now, some people may not like this, but it's the best way to keep control is by giving up control. And here's what that sounds like. So Josh, the fee for us to help you will be about $7,000 over the next 12 months. And we'll provide all high-level service to you and your family and so forth. But let me pause for a moment and ask you, how do you feel about that fee? Does that feel higher or lower than what you were expecting? Well, Josh, that's a dangerous question to ask somebody, okay? But so many people tell me, Derrick, I can't believe people left and they seemed like they were happy with the fee, then they ghosted me. And it's because you didn't have the big boy or the big girl discussion giving them control to give you feedback in the moment. You see, when you say, hey, I want to have a candid conversation now, tell me about that fee. Does that feel high to you, low to you, or about what you expected? And then let them say whatever they're going to say. Well, now in the moment, now you can talk about, well, Derrick, it does seem high. Okay, just open dialogue here. What fee do you feel more comfortable with? Well, Derrick, that's a crazy question to ask. No. The goal is we're having an adult-to-adult conversation. Let's figure out a way to work together. You see, sometimes you can sense this as a professional, that the person really respects you. They really, really want to work with you, but money for them is a tight commodity. So they're not saying you're a bad person. They just may not want to let loose of all that you want them to let loose of. Does that make sense? So the goal is before they leave that visit, now you've had a big boy, big girl discussion, and now you know where you both are on the fee. So there's no surprises. What we find is most professionals never tell the prospect what the next step is in the relationship. You see, when you say, what we want to do today, we're going to nail down the fee. I would always collect the fee in the next visit, but we wanted to nail down the range of that fee in this visit here to get their buy-in. Then when they came back in, there was no surprises. So many people then, by not clarifying the fee in that first visit, it's total surprise. The person comes in, I don't want to pay this. And now we're sort of relitigating something that should have been talked about in the first visit. So again, communicate like you cook a brisket. Just by talking lower and slower, you'll be shocked. People tend to lean in. They take you more seriously. It's like you have the mentality of you are the specialist doctor that only has the unique ability to solve their unique financial pain. Even if you're desperate, you have to get a client to make this month's mortgage payment. Talk to them as though there's a line of clients out the door, a line of prospects waiting to work with you. And when you do that, when you act like you're not needy for the next client, most people become more needy to work with you.
Yeah, totally makes sense. You're having a conversation versus it's just like here's the fee. You want to sign up?
That's right.
And they're like, I got to go talk to my dog about it. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely a lot of great insights from someone who's done it. And now you're actually doing social media, doing coaching, you sold your business. What are you working on next to help folks out there, convey their message, since you did give up a successful practice and now it sounds like you're having a lot of fun doing what you're doing now?
Yeah. So let me go back and tell you why I decided to sell, because a lot of people questioned me on this decision. So I had built one of the top financial firms in the country for 25 years. And every year I go on a yearly sabbatical. I take about 5 days completely by myself to think and pray and journal. And I ask myself 3 questions. Number 1, what can I do to be a better father? What can I do to be a better husband? And what can I do to be a better leader? Okay, those are the 3 questions that guide my time. And so I was in Boston. I like to be near the water. So I'm right there on the wharf at the hotel in Boston, July of 2019. And morning of my sabbatical, first day, I began to write a list of all the things I would enjoy doing. Okay. And I wrote down, write a book, as you see behind me here, launch a podcast, coach, speak, consult. Could I build a business that could mimic the recurring revenue of what I built in my financial planning firm? Could I take that challenge on? Shockingly, Josh, at the bottom of that list was not the words financial advisor. That's when I knew. So literally within about 15 minutes of my 5-day sabbatical, I just knew it was time to sell the business. And what was crazy was up to that point, I'd been aggressively buying other firms. I had taken a pencil and looked at what's an hour and a half flight from Dallas-Fort Worth, looked at Nashville, South Texas, all these areas. And I knew in that moment, I was going through the motions because I enjoyed the acquisition piece. I enjoyed buying and converting clients over to me, winning their trust. I loved all of that. And now I help so many advisors through that process because I've done it so many times. But I realized I call it Derrick 2.0. For me to go where I truly wanted to go would mean I would need to sell. Now, so many business owners I meet, they're what I call fence straddlers. They're in the office a little bit, but they're mentally on the golf course. They're out of the office. I am a hot or cold guy. I didn't want to just run at this as a lifestyle practice. And so I said, you know what? To fully bet on myself and put pressure on myself to build something brand new, I would need to back myself into the corner, burn the ships, as Cortez said, and build something brand new. And I will tell you, one of the hardest things I did, quick story, when I was in the 6th grade, we moved to Arlington, Texas. And there was a dentist, Dr. Hilton, who was my dentist all the way through college. And it became more than a dentist relationship. We would talk about business and entrepreneurship, and he was like a business mentor to me. He talked about investments. It was great. I actually looked forward to going to the dentist. Okay, it was that crazy. So one day, I'm about to get up out of the chair. He says, "Hey, Derrick, this will be the last time I see you." And I was like, "Why?" He said, "Well, I've decided to sell my business. I'm retiring." It hit me like a bag of rocks on my chest. It was like I was grieving the death of a relationship. And so years later, when I decided to sell my business, I said, I don't want any of my clients to feel like I did getting shocked and awed that day that I suddenly wouldn't see my person again. So I decided to call each of my clients one by one. And it was like pressing a button that replayed our entire life together. Some of these clients have been with me all 25 years. Some have been with me for just a few months. And I actually took some notes on what people said. Most people were very, very excited. Derrick, you get to put into practice what you've helped us do. We're so happy for you. A few people legit cussed me out. They said, Derrick, I can't believe you're abandoning us. You promised to help us retire here. You're retiring before us. That is not fair. And I worked to calm them down. But one lady summarized the entire process really well. She said, Derrick, if you're going to have a midlife crisis, just buy a Corvette. It's a whole lot cheaper. But I got to tell you, it took me about a month and a half to call through individually all of my clients. And it was right after Valentine's Day, 2020, in all vulnerability here, I literally broke down and cried. It was like this weight was now off my shoulders. I had run the race well. It was very important to me not to hand my clients off to someone, but to hand them up to someone. I thought I was a really, really good advisor, and people told me that. What I realized, though, is in order to sell this and do these clients justice, I needed to find someone who I thought was better than me. So I got paid well for the sale, but it was basically me eating a big heaping slice of humble pie, saying I was good, but this person is better, if that makes sense, because my clients deserved only better. My vision was 12 months from now, I wanted to be able to see them at the coffee shop and see them around town, and for them to say, Derrick, we miss you, but we really like who you sold our practice to.
Yeah, it's sometimes you have to eat the bag of poop and learn to like it, especially when you're doing something like that for 25 years. I mean, that's really tough. And you were able to do it during COVID?
Well, I actually sold it right before COVID started, which was just an unforeseen blessing from God there. But it actually was good because it allowed the new owners to build trust quickly with the client base. I was able to transition. We ended up keeping, which is almost unheard of, we kept about 99% of the clients all transitioned to the new person, which is very rare. Typically that may go as high as maybe 95%. Sometimes it's only as high as 90%. And part of it was because they felt like they were involved in the process. There was no shock and awe. They knew what I was doing. There was a good handoff. And so now as I coach and lead advisors around the country, one of the specialties that I have is if you're about to buy another practice, what can you do to typically be selected as one of the finalists to buy whatever business you want to buy? And oftentimes it's all about building trust early on, where the buyer doesn't want to hand off the baby they've raised to the lowest bidder or someone trying to get their price down. When I would negotiate, I would always tell the person I wanted to buy their business from, hey, listen, I know you're asking, 1 million, 2 million, whatever the price is. Honestly, it's probably worth far more than that. Now, my budget does have a limit on it, but I want you to know that I admire and respect what you've built. And I want to carry on the legacy that you've helped build. I want to be one of the finalists to help take your business into the next generation, but for you to be proud of who you sold it to. You see, I took the approach of how do you praise and honor the person. I was a finalist in almost every deal I did. I rarely lost out on deals I really, really wanted because I wasn't coming in to say, hey, I know you're asking 2 million. It's really only worth 1.5. No. That's like telling your kid, somebody's kid, hey, I don't really like your kid very much. Everybody loves their kid. You want to treat it as though you're talking about their family. And when you do that and you communicate and find out what's important to them, then they want you to buy it because they feel like this person gets me and will carry on the legacy of what I built for these clients.
Yeah. I mean, you said it very eloquently. Find your message, care about people, and be a good person, and you'll end up on the right path. And it led you to where you are now. And that's crazy how you exited right before, you're on the right path because you exited right before everything went chaotic. And that's when advisors really get to build the trust with folks, because people are actually going to call you back. When everything's going well, it's a lot tougher to get people on the phone.
You're exactly right. It's so interesting because, one of the things I mentioned earlier was by taking these gift cards to the local high schools, had this unforeseen benefit. And what I've named that now is having what I call a generosity purpose. So there was a guy named Dave, a longtime client. He came in the office one day. And Josh, you know those relationships you've got where you can just tell something's wrong with the person based on just their body language?
Oh, yeah.
He was wearing the weight of the world on his shoulders. I said, Dave, what's wrong? And he says, Derrick, I just don't feel motivated to go to the office anymore. I feel like I'm going through the motions. I show up, I come home, I'm not feeling meaning or purpose in my life at all. And for whatever reason, the words shot out of my mouth. I said, Dave, is there a cause that you care about? And he sat stunned for a moment, and then he leaned back and he began to tell me a story. And he said, Derrick, many years ago, I took my family on a trip overseas. In this particular village that the guide took them to, there was total poverty. And the guide told their family, the reason there's so much poverty here is because there's no dedicated schoolhouse. If there was a schoolhouse, the kids could be educated. It would revolutionize this entire community. And he remembered exchanging a glance with his wife as if to say, wouldn't it be cool to fund that school? Well, he got back to the States, life got busy, back in his business, and my question brought this all flooding back. And I said, Dave, what if you did this? Something crazy. What if you set an aggressive sales goal, and then you took half of that increase and used it to fund that school? Well, now his eyes got as big as saucers. He said, you know what, why don't you come back in the office, 6 months from now, give you time to work on this. And so we set up a follow-up visit. Okay. He rescheduled, came back in 3 months earlier. He looked younger. He looked rejuvenated. He looked back on his game. And I said, Dave, what happened? He said, Derrick, what you said completely motivated me. He said, I put a tab on our website. I called it the generosity purpose, like you called it. And I mocked up a picture of the school. And we began to call all of our clients and even let our prospects know that, hey, you can work with any consulting firm in town, but when you work with us, part of our proceeds are going to help fund that school. His clients got excited. Prospects got excited. Most importantly, though, his team got excited. No longer were they just showing up, punching the clock. They were working for a purpose. But the biggest winner, Josh, was Dave. Suddenly, Dave was reborn. He was remotivated because now he wanted to make a lot of money and help a lot of people so that he could do more good with it. And that became the impetus for my book, Good Money Revolution, how to make more money to do more good. And what I teach professionals now is if you're simply chasing the bulging bank account, you're on the fast track to burnout.
Yeah.
But the antidote to that is to go make more money, but tie it to a cause that you care about. I like to say when you connect meaning to your money and a purpose to your profits and a cause to your cash, well, now you're working with purpose and meaning so that when your head hits the pillow at night, you've lived a day of meaning and fulfillment. And that's what everybody wants. And it's motivation. It's fresh motivation to say, I want to set aggressive goals so I can serve more people, change more lives, so I can give to the cause that I care about. It's truly transformational.
Awesome. On that note, I'm going to send on a high note, and we'll see everyone next time, and have a good money revolution, and check Derrick out. Bye.